Hey guys, thank you for tuning into this new episode of the Mindful Steward podcast. I am having a conversation with my friend Robbie O'Kruk. I connected with Robbie years ago, actually, when I was traveling a lot, and he was working at an ad agency and he reached out to me and kind of asked me how I was doing it and what I thought about traveling. My response was to basically ask him about how he got into his industry and try and learn more about his work. And coincidentally, it's a few years later now, and I work in advertising, trying to accumulate all the skills that he now has. And he works as a digital nomad. So right now, he runs the Digital Nomad Forum. It's a website and Facebook group with thousands of users from all around the world where he supports them with their remote businesses and teaches them skills and practices that help them run things more efficiently. And he's also a mindfulness teacher. He's done a lot of different meditation trainings. I believe he's done his yoga teacher training as well. And his new venture, or one of his many new ventures, is that he is running a Mindful Nomads Retreat where he teaches people mindfulness practices, meditation, all different things in that realm of things, as well as how to run their own international business remotely, so through the internet. I think this conversation turned out really awesome. I'm actually pretty pleased with the different topics that we got onto, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Also, if you guys are enjoying the podcast at all, please subscribe wherever you're listening. Subscriptions and ratings help me get this podcast in front of more listeners. The algorithms tend to like me a little more that way. And also, within the month, I keep saying this, but I think it will be within December, I'm going to be releasing a bunch of mindfulness resources on my own website. So that will include guided meditations, an ebook or two that I'm in the process of finishing up. So hopefully that can be of benefit to people as well. So I'm going to introduce you. I tend to do this often. I just introduce people from my perspective of how I know them just before we get into the real conversation. But it's kind of funny how you and I have ended up actually being in touch with things because you were in the office working at an ad agency. And I was just I was traveling after school, and I was actually kind of a lost soul just doing that because I didn't know what to do. And it was fun at the time. And I don't regret it at all. Like, and I'm not going to stop traveling. I feel like it brings so much value to you. Like, your perspective really comes from your experiences. And when you do those things young, it really opens up the breadth of how much you can kind of absorb. At least that's the way I look at it. But so I think those are some of the most valuable experiences and times that I've ever had. But and you were basically asking me, so how were you doing that, man? Like, what's it like kind of traveling around and just having
Oh
adventures?
yeah, because you were in Nicaragua, and I was like, "Oh, dude, like I want to go to Nicaragua. Like I've never traveled before." That's so funny.
Yeah,
Oh man, how did
I remember
everything is just flipped, man. That's crazy.
it's so funny. And now I'm working at an ad agency in Toronto, and I'm excited about it. I'm happy about this stage. But at the time, I was completely on the opposite side. We were literally in flipped roles where I was traveling around and you were asking me, what's it like? I might go to Nicaragua and try this remote work, try this kind of lifestyle for a bit. And I was messaging you, asking you questions about how did you get into digital advertising? Because I've
Yeah.
traveled around and I met a bunch of people who work in digital marketing, and they make good money while they live in cool places and surf every morning. So I was super
Yeah.
intrigued by that. And that's what got me into all of this. And now I actually like it. I find the whole thing interesting. But that is
That's
somewhat of the
awesome.
goal for me, is the freedom of doing the kind of thing that you're doing right now.
Yeah, man. And man, this is an exciting conversation, like reflecting back because I know that you're gonna be there pretty damn soon.
Yeah. I mean, I'm at this point right now. I was talking to my buddy the other weekend about it. I'm at this point right now where if I wanted to just quit my job, I would be fine. You know, I have enough
Man,
skills. I could make it work. I could do whatever,
my
but
sister, my
I just don't
sister,
want it yet.
you don't want it yet. Okay.
Not yet.
Because I was gonna say you should come to Bali because my sister and her roommate are both coming to meet me and my partner Haley in Bali at the beginning of February, and so they're both quitting their jobs and coming to test it out. And so, okay, I can't hear you now. Your mic just is
It
gone.
just cut out.
Oh, now I can hear you.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, they're coming in the beginning of February. So if you wanted to test it at that time, that would be an excellent time because I'm gonna be helping my sister, probably her roommate, and if you came, then I could help you too figure out all that remote work stuff and living in paradise in Bali. It's the best. Like
Oh,
Canggu's super close by, awesome surf. You know. Anyways, food for thought. February, be there, be square.
I'll keep it in mind. I'm kind of planning through my company right now to go and work remotely. And I want to go somewhere where I can surf, but I think Bali's a little bit far away from this time zone. It might be a little bit
It's
difficult.
totally
Off,
it's like
but
13 hours ahead.
yeah, like that would be a little bit difficult. I'd probably like to pick somewhere where I'm only a couple hours off at the most, but um, yeah, I'm trying that out soon. I don't know when it will happen, but I'm kind of in the midst of figuring it out.
Cool, man. Well, keep me posted because it's interesting. It's been a while since we connected, but I've always enjoyed chatting with you, and I look forward to when we can actually hang out in person. So keep me posted on what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I'll come visit sometime. If you're still
Yeah,
over
man.
there, been there for ages now.
I came back to Canada actually. I was just in Canada for 3 weeks a couple weeks ago, but yeah, it's been 2 years of traveling more or less.
Okay, not bad, dude. Um, so we may as well just take this segue and dive into the digital nomad lifestyle that you're basically living. So,
Sure.
I think a lot of people are really intrigued by people who have careers and jobs where they can pull that off. And obviously, digital marketing is probably the perfect example of that. But yeah, I just kind of was curious to hear how you're doing it, what kind of work you're taking on, and then I can remind you after because I mean, feel free to rant for as long as you can because these are basically for me or anyone who's listening to kind of hear about you. But I'm also curious to hear if you find that there's any downsides about that lifestyle because I know there's got to be some. It's glamorous looking on the outside, but I've been there, so I know that there are moments where you're like, "Oh man, I wish I was at home or something like that."
Yeah, for sure. So let's do this in two parts because there's two questions. First part is like how am I guess doing it right now? And then what are some of the like challenges? So I'll start with I guess how am I living as a digital nomad right now? And we got to go back in time a little bit to give some context because I think this is valuable for whoever's listening. So when I started the digital nomad journey, it started when I was working doing digital advertising in London, Ontario, Canada, a small city of 400,000, conservative city, not really an exciting place to live, in my opinion. And so I was working at this kind of semi-corporate job, and realized there's more to life. I want to explore. Got this like travel bug in me after a trip to Mexico with the company, which led me then to go to Nicaragua on like a 2-week vacation test trip to see if this kind of digital nomad thing was cool for me. So I brought my laptop. I went to Nicaragua, had like an amazing time living in a totally different like world. And I was productive as well. So shortly after, I returned home to Canada and I quit my job. And then a few months after that, I took a one-way flight to Bangkok, Thailand. And along that, between like quitting and arriving in Thailand, I picked up some freelance digital advertising work from people I knew locally in Canada. And so I was traveling for a few months around Southeast Asia. And then that work kind of dried up. And as me and you were just talking about, it can be a challenge to work with people in Canada while you're in Southeast Asia because you've got like a 12-hour time zone difference. So that work dried up in Canada, and I wasn't really having success to get more from the people I already knew in Canada. So then at that time, I was in Bali and I was surrounded by other people working remotely as digital nomads. And so I knew there was a way. I was like, there's got to be a way to find remote work. Like, how do you consistently find well-paid work? And so I started exploring and like talking to people and researching online. And I came across this thing called Upwork. So Upwork's like the world's largest remote work platform.
Okay.
And yeah, and so I heard kind of two sides of the story. Like, people were saying, "Oh no, Upwork doesn't work because there's all these people charging like super low rates, can't compete, nobody replies to my proposals." But then I could also see with my own eyes, like, you can look at people's profiles and see like what they're charging on an hourly rate and how much work they're getting. And I was like, well, tons of people are killing it. Like, they're absolutely successful. They are finding lots of work that's well paid. So what's the difference between these people? Like, let's say it doesn't work and does work. And so I focused on the people who were having this success and learning from, like, what are they doing that's like different than these naysayers. And I quickly discovered, wow, there's a huge difference between what they're doing. And so I spent a lot of time learning about Upwork before I even tried it, like probably dozens of hours researching. And then I tried it with what I learned and had huge success. So I was earning like $30, or I guess we'll keep it in USD, $25 USD an hour roughly previously with my freelance work from Canada. And basically overnight on Upwork, I started earning like 70 or $80 US per hour. So almost like a 3 to 4 times increase in my hourly earning without a change in my experience, just by learning how to kind of position myself and use this remote work platform called Upwork. And so I rolled with that for a bit, and that was going great. I was finding clients and getting paid more than I ever had in my life, like more money than I could ever need. I went to India for yoga teacher training. That kind of flipped my whole life upside down. I really started to think more about, like, what do I want to work on? Like, what do I want to spend my time on? And the answer was not on helping companies I don't know or care about sell things online, which is essentially what I was doing. So after that training, came back and like politely and professionally fired all of my clients and kind of traveled around for a bit, and eventually, without working, and eventually was starting to run out of money and had to figure out how to earn money again, but didn't want to like sell out. Kind of didn't want to work for these like companies perpetuating consumerism and other values that I no longer was ignorant of or not resonating with. And so I started to explore, like, how can I find this digital marketing, digital advertising work with just nonprofits and charities. And then I was successful in that. So then I started working with just charities and nonprofits. Then I think along the way, this idea for a project of mine, it's called the Mindful Nomads Retreat, came into mind. Because what I had realized in this whole journey from starting in Canada to now working with charities and nonprofits is that there's a lot of other people who want to figure out the remote work stuff. Of course, they want to travel, earn money remotely, amazing. But even more so, there's like this desperation in people for sure to find a way to be earning their living from doing meaningful work, which is kind of what I had explored with transitioning into working with nonprofits and charities. And so the idea of the Mindful Nomads Retreat became this 1 week boot camp where we were focused on teaching them how to consistently find well-paid and meaningful remote work, as well as integrating mindfulness practices like yoga and meditation. And so that came into fruition in the end of July of 2018, and it went amazing. We had like 13 people from around the world come, and we did this week boot camp, and like people, lives are changed, to be honest, and people were crying at some points and laughing, and just like an amazing experience where for me, I really tasted what it means to do what you love and also feel financially supported. And that was amazing. And so since that experience have been exploring turning some of what the retreat became into like an online course and offering some coaching programs, as well as planning more retreats for next year. So it's still kind of a work in progress. It's not completely supporting me financially yet, but it's getting there. One retreat is a huge accomplishment that I'm proud of, and it takes a while to build. At least, yeah, I think it takes a while to build a business, a project that is truly doing what you love and supporting yourself financially. Like that's amazing. And so it's a challenge. It's a big challenge. And so that's what I'm working towards now. And so I'm kind of back into dabbling. I've started coaching some people with the remote work stuff, which is going really well, and people are getting really awesome results, as well as supporting myself with some more nonprofit and charity digital marketing work while I continue to kind of build this Mindful Nomads Retreat project. So that was a lot of talking, but that's what's going on.
That's incredible, dude. Wow. Okay. It's kind of neat hearing this right from you because I've been seeing what you have been up to for a while now, but we haven't really had the chance to catch up and I haven't really actually heard the story of what's going on. So that's
Kind of.
really actually a lot more than I expected you to talk about, but that's amazing because um on a similar note, I have very similar interests as just exactly those two things that you're talking about. Like I'm really becoming more and more into mindfulness. I think it's an incredible topic that is so important in this day and age. Um, and I've honestly kind of subconsciously, I've just been researching it and just reading it because it's the content that I've been interested in for years now. And I'm at this point right now where I'm meeting a lot of like-minded people in Toronto. Toronto's a really great city to find a community of people that are like you. The biggest city in Canada, one of the biggest in North America. You're bound to meet these people. Um, and I'm just realizing how deep I actually am into this stuff just by slowly, very casually reading books about it because I was slightly interested. Um, and I've always been kind of thinking, well, I haven't always been thinking about it, but more recently I've been thinking what can be done in this area? Like what more could I do with all of these interests? Um, so it's really cool to see that you're doing that and that you're obviously kind of finding a lot of passion in your work because that's how I think you really provide really valuable offerings to clients or anybody really is when you're actually really interested in it.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. When the passion is there, that's when the not like the perfectionism, but the impact comes. Because if you can be passionate about what you do, not only is it enjoyable to work on it, but what the end result looks like is just infinitely more amazing than something where you're kind of dragging your feet and just doing it because you have to. That kind of mentality, it doesn't bring beautiful fruits to fruition, if you know what I mean.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you enjoy the work, There's a lot more to it than just the simple process of the end result. Or not the process of the end result. There's a lot more to it than just the process. But I like that you brought up consumerism in there too. Like I'm kind of curious to hear if you found this. I'm almost sure that you probably did, but when you travel for a prolonged amount of time in places like Bali or Nicaragua, um, Central America is basically where I did it for the first time. You have these incredible experiences, and for most people, they're easily in the top, wildest things that you've ever done, and you really experience the value of them. And they're so simple. That's the thing. It's just you on a beach. Probably you have like a beer in your hand. You're wearing board shorts and a tank top and sandals. And I realized really, I feel like I actually wrote an article and it's short. I don't really write articles like that as much anymore, but I became a minimalist by accident. And I just kind of talked about how
But
I was just bouncing around and up to this point where things felt like having physical things felt burdensome. And they make you think in all these privileged ways as well, where your like $1,000 iPhone is glitching out and you get all stressed out about that. It brings so many more, it just
Yeah.
complicates things. And I mean, I'm thinking about it now and I'm like, I haven't done a really long trip in a place like that in a while. And I'm realizing that I'm kind of living that way more than I have in a long time, but it's refreshing. That's what I really find refreshing about going to third world backpacker type places is you get there and it's just you and the place that you're in again. And you're also just fully awakened to the fact that people live so different than you could ever picture without
Yeah.
having seen it with your own eyes. And
Yeah.
most people on the entire planet live that way. Like people in Toronto and people in London, Ontario, we forget that so often.
I couldn't agree more. Like that's definitely one of the biggest takeaways that I've personally learned through travel is, when you're living in a place like Canada where we're so fortunate to have like a really high quality of living, you hear about like, the state of the world and how other people are living. But I'd wager to argue that, for most people, like 90% plus, you really have no true conception or understanding of what that actually is like until you see it and experience it for yourself. And I think I have a nice story I could share about this that might be interesting for your listeners.
Yeah, go for
Um,
it. Please share.
so I was after my yoga teacher training in India, I continued to travel throughout India exploring. And I can't remember which city I was in, but I was traveling with my friend Annie Root at the time. And actually, funny backtrack. So when I was working in Canada in corporate, uh, there was this Google support that helped me with some projects. And the guy on the Google support was named Annie Root, and he was from India. And we worked together over the phone across the world for like over a year. And, we became as good of friends as you can, kind of working together on the phone with someone similar to your age. Um, and so when I had quit the job and I started traveling, like months later, when I was going to India, I realized, oh man, Annie Root's from India. So I reached out to Annie Root, and he actually came and flew the farthest he'd ever been away from his home to meet me in his home country and then travel together across India for a few weeks. And so that was humbling, amazing. Like what kind of person, like, this is just amazing. Like there's people out there who will go the furthest they've ever been from their home just to like meet you and welcome you to their country. Like, wow. So that was like just humbling. And in our 2-week adventure, we spent traveling India um, together, and we stayed in a home through couch surfing, right? So it's free for people who don't know. It's a free app that connects you with people who are willing to host you in their homes for nothing, for no money. What's really expected out of it is just connection, just meeting that person who's hosting you and talking with them and just exploring, I don't know, being human together, really. And so we stayed with this small family, a mother, a father, and their young son in their extremely humble and small home in an Indian city. And so we literally slept on like a pallet with a small mattress in their kitchen because there's no guest bedroom. There's no even guest bed. There's just this like spot to lie in the kitchen. And there's no true running water. Like the water they have comes from a storage tank on the roof of the like apartment that houses so many other people's homes. And so there's no shower and there's no flushing toilet. To shower, you fill up a bucket with water and with one hand dump it over yourself, with the other hand kind of scrubbing yourself down. And when you have to take a dump, you have to use your hand to clean yourself off, and then you wash your hand after. But there's no toilet paper. There's no, uh, you know, there's so this coming from Canada, all of this, like no shower, no toilet, like using your hand to wipe yourself off was just like, holy moly. Like it just like blew my mind and just like deeply humbled me because so many people in India live like that. And so many people in other countries in the world live like that or worse. Like these people could be considered fortunate by many around the world. And so after you live that, after scrub your own asshole with your finger and you've never done that before, that changes your life. It really does because you can't forget or not know anymore how people are living.
Hmm. Yeah, that's an incredible story because that's about as authentic of an experience as you possibly could have had, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's what I've heard about India, you know? That's like India is on my bucket list. I was talking to someone about this recently and they asked me where is the first place you would go if you could go anywhere in the world? And I said India. And it threw them right off. And to me, it's just completely intuitive. It's because it would just be a life-changing experience. And um my dad and my stepmom, they have some friends who are a couple and they're really their friends are really adventurous. They've basically been around the world and they it's not even like they're backpacking or anything, but they reached out to them and said that they have a huge deal on like a Kontiki tour kind of a trip in India for I think it's 2.5 weeks. And I don't know. I guess they see me as a well-traveled person. I see myself as somebody who has a lot farther to go to ever be able to consider myself that. But they're asking me my opinion. And my response was, you have to do that. And they're going to be freaked out like completely because they've never done that kind of traveling at all. But I think the value in seeing that, you have to see those things. Honestly, I think you have to.
Yeah, I think it's important. And a friend of mine who I've made from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, who I'm going to visit again for the third time in the last 2 years in a few weeks, he shared his perspective on India as a country for really providing those humbling experiences because India is like it's like everything. It's like a kung fu punch right in the face. You can't ignore it. It's got so much beauty and richness of culture and delicious food and just it's a whole nother world, and it's got the challenging sides of it as well. It's got intense poverty and crazy smells and just things that a lot of people who aren't from that country are not used to. And he talked about if he ever had kids, like one of the first things he would do when they are of a suitable age is take their asses to India and just show them like, oh, you complain about like, not having your ice cream or something, insignificant like this. And then them, yeah, being there, living in India and seeing how people live so much more humbly and with so much less than many other people do. And I was just like, yeah, like after my experience in India, I was like, I'm gonna do that too. If I ever have kids, they're going to India boot camp to kind of get an experience of humbling. I hope that would be my intention, and just experiencing the difference in how this country lives, and hopefully providing that perspective of we are so lucky to be from where we are and enjoy the quality of life that we do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think those kind of experiences can be really, really good for someone's mentality like that. Because, I mean, if you want to talk about mindfulness, which is basically, approaching, there's a lot of different ways you could describe mindfulness, but one aspect of it is approaching your thoughts in a conscious way, choose those thoughts and be aware of them. Choose them when you can. But if you can kind of like this is a funny way for me to draw a parallel, but um like I'm technically from a completely immigrant background. My grandpa came to Canada after the war because he couldn't go back to Poland. Um and and my mom's side is from Portugal, and they were like literally poor farmers, like super poor, living in a hut kind of thing. And to me, I never thought anything of it. I just, grew up with those grandparents. My one grandfather's still around, and never thought anything of it. And then when I started traveling, um, I kind of saw all these poor lifestyles that people live. And I finally realized, like, oh my God, this is literally the reason my family's moved to Canada is to get away from this kind of thing. And for me, that's like the most humbling thing. I feel like that is literally the best thing I have going for me is that I have finally realized what my grandparents went through and what kind of lifestyle they lived because I'm humbled by that almost every single day. It's like I could have my situation could be so much shittier, honestly. I'm literally and my grandparents, their whole life was devoted to kind of changing that for their grandkids. And now I'm finally here. I live in Canada. I have all the opportunity in the world. There's like nothing that I can really take for granted. And it's a cool thing to finally be able to be awakened to that. Um, but I'm going to kind of twist this into the mindfulness stuff. So I'm kind of curious to know on your retreats, or even if you're doing mindfulness teaching kind of on the side, what is your approach to that? Is it highly ingrained in meditation and mindfulness type teachings, or is it more about the digital nomad type of information?
That's a great question. So with the first retreat we did, I feel like it was really kind of evenly split. Like to give everyone listening an idea of what a day at the retreat looked like. It was, we'd wake up fairly early in the morning and we'd practice yoga together for about 90 minutes, eat some breakfast, and then we'd have about 2 hours of kind of business focused, digital nomad, remote work stuff, and then some lunch, another 2 hours of remote work, digital nomad stuff. Then we'd have an evening meditation, and then dinner, and then bedtime. Also worth mentioning is the food was all plant-based, which is definitely coming from a mindfulness-based approach, just being mindful about what kind of food are we putting into our bodies. Like, do we want quality, delicious food? Do we want food that hasn't caused any sentient beings to suffer? So the food, the meditation, the yoga, and then having one-on-one sessions in between the breaks and in between all that stuff I just mentioned, where people can loop in with each of the teachers about their challenges, whether that's more the remote work and digital nomad stuff, or maybe it's more about the meditation and yoga. So I guess we provide kind of a fairly even split and then give people a bit of freedom to explore and learn what they need, what's going to be most like helpful and nurturing for them.
Very cool. So, from your perspective, how would you describe mindfulness? I know everyone kind of sees it from a different angle. So I'm kind of curious to hear how you see it.
This is a great segue for me later today, because later today I'm planning to record a video on what is a mindful digital nomad. And the way I was going to break it up was by starting with what is mindfulness. And I don't want to claim to anyone listening that I'm the guru and I know what mindfulness is 110%. So I'm just going to share what mindfulness means to me. And mindfulness to me is just basically the awareness and mindfulness of what we do. So when you eat something, are you just eating like whatever the first thing you see is, or are you thinking about like what is going to nurture my body? When you think about what you're going to work on, like are you just doing what other people are telling you to, or are you maybe thinking about, what is going to be good for me and the rest of the world? It's just, I think, being aware and present with the intention and reason behind our actions rather than just being on autopilot and just kind of going with the flow of everyone else's kind of interests and desires.
Okay. I love that explanation. I think that really simplifies a thought that I've been kind of drumming through for a little while now. Um, yeah, for
There's
me, I think mindfulness is, it's funny I asked this question before I've even thought about it myself, but um, to be totally honest, I mean, I'm a very chill persona. Like I'm a very easygoing person. Um, I think that's both a blessing and a curse sometimes, but I have a really overactive mind. And at times in my life, I felt a lot of anxiety over certain things. And in particular, it may not have seemed like it, but when I was kind of in limbo, avoiding starting my career by just traveling all the time, I was really uncertain about what was going to come next and how to make it happen. And I would psych myself out. And I think I got into a really introspective point in my life where I started observing, why am I having these like self-doubting thoughts? Why am I having these very confused thoughts? Um, so yeah, very similar to your explanation. It's kind of it's like basically consciousness of like, instead of
exactly.
just thinking all these things, kind of watch them and be like, why do I think these?
Hmm.
And um, more recently, I'm going to say in the last couple years, I've kind of really actually tried out kind of all these approaches about pre-programming those automatic responses. Um, so instead of just acting on autopilot, you can kind of teach your subconscious mind to have an autopilot of your own choosing. Um,
Definitely.
and I found a lot of success in that. And basically, the whole root in that is that, like, if something triggers you and you just act out, if you act out of fear, like, I'll use a really good example because someone sent me a video the other day about anxious and avoidant relationships. And there's people in relationships who are very anxious and attached in an unhealthy way. And then there's people who are avoidant whenever something freaks them out. And if you're feeling insecure and you're just going to act out on that and it's going to damage your relationship, that's not what you want. Like, it's okay to feel insecure, but you need to not allow that insecurity to be the decision maker in your own life. So
Exactly.
I think that's the big picture view of what I look at what mindfulness is. It's not allowing those automatic responses to be the decision maker in your life, but they're not going to go away. But you can teach your mind to think in better ways, you know?
Totally. And I guess something I'd like to share with everyone is, you know, when you think about the people, when you hear stories from someone like myself or from Sean or whoever else is doing things, and you're like, wow, like I wish I could do that. At least for myself, I think it's really important to share that I feel lots of fear. I definitely face anxiety. Like I have just as many challenges as anyone else, and so does pretty much every single other human on this planet. So the difference between the people who like become a digital nomad or actually go traveling is not that they don't feel fear and they're not scared and that they're just like, oh, this will be easy. It's that they feel that sensation, that emotion, they recognize it, okay, it's there, but then as you just said, they don't let that guide their action. They still make the action that is like going through the fear. It's pushing through it. It's like you still feel it. It's uncomfortable. It's definitely not pleasant, but you still make the challenging step. You step up basically and you work through that fear. So we're not nobody's superhuman. Nobody doesn't feel this stuff. It's just that some people choose to take action in the face of those unpleasant sensations and emotions.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing about all of that with pushing through and kind of making decisions that scare you in the first place is that that's how you build up your confidence. And
Exactly.
I can honestly say that there was a point in time where I avoided doing any of that because I didn't have the confidence. And I came across some really awesome content that kind of changed the way that I look at things. And it basically was preaching that the way to build your confidence and build your purpose in life is to just get down to work. It's going to suck and it's going to be terrifying, but once you've created kind of a floor, you've built the floor for your house. then you're going to feel a little more secure putting the walls up, and then the
Yep.
next floor. And it builds,
Yep.
that's how confidence builds, taking those risks. It's like a very cliche thing to say, but you grow when you really step outside your comfort zone. Like, do little things every day. Let's say you're really
Yep.
shy. Because this is a real thing that I've gone through at points too. Just say hi to someone once a day. Just say hi to an
Exactly.
old lady at the grocery store once a day. A few weeks later, you're going to be comfortable just talking to that old lady. And then
Yep.
a few months later, you're going to be comfortable talking to young people your age. And then a few months later, you're going to be comfortable talking to girls when you're at a bar or something. Not that I do that anyways. Like, I'm not really like go to bars to meet girls, um, but yeah,
Yeah. No,
it's all stepping stones.
exactly. I love it. I was just gonna say I totally subscribe to a stepping stone philosophy. It's not that like you need to quit your job and travel the world tomorrow, but maybe it's that you start, finding a little bit of remote work on the side of your existing job, and you slowly grow that to a point where you would feel comfortable quitting your job, and then you stay at your home country doing that remote work for a little bit, and then you travel on like a 2-week test trip. And then after that, if it went well, then you take the leap. Like you don't have to, jump into the Arctic ice water that you're like deathly afraid of. You can just, start with a little bit of wading in the kiddie pool. And I think this is what I love so much about mindfulness practices like yoga and meditation is that they're very much practices that give you strength and power for taking those little steps. Like, for example, yoga, like a yoga asana practice, which is the actual movement of the body, which is what most people think of when they think of yoga, is it's not about moving your body. One huge aspect of it is kind of finding this edge, this challenging point where you're like, oh, I'm really tired. Like you just want to kind of like let your arms down. And instead of letting your arms down, you hold them up for a 1 second or 5 seconds or 10 seconds, and then you put them down. But you show up each day for that practice of where you're finding your edge and your edge is changing each day. And it's just all about, yeah, it's about changing that subconscious kind of autopilot to, instead of when something challenging comes up, just to kind of drop your arms down, to just hold for 1 second, for 5 seconds, for 10 seconds. And so it's that practice of being at your edge, staying there, that you do in your yoga practice, but then it extends into the rest of your life. And a similar kind of philosophy and experience happens with meditation, and any other mindfulness based practice will have amazing benefits that you get to experience in the short term while you're actually practicing it, but the long term value is in how it then creeps into the rest of your day, the rest of your life.
Yes, I love that. I think Joe Rogan talks about it a lot. I'm a huge Joe Rogan fan, but he just talks about discipline and
Yeah.
just fostering discipline. And for him, he talks about it often, but going to the gym, for most people, it's not about getting jacked. It's
Yeah.
about the discipline that it fosters. And then, if you hold that habit steady for a long time, you're going to start being disciplined with your other goals. And that's kind of where a lot of you could call them self-help people. They literally start by saying, "Do you make your bed in the morning? Do you clean your dishes every day? Do you leave shit all over your apartment? Or are
Mm.
you clean?" Like, literally do that. Do those things. Be an
The
adult and
small
take care of
things.
those things. Yeah, and then take care of organizing your schedule at work better. And then everything, having an organized life and the discipline to do that is a habit that helps in everything. And it's just, you don't have to make massive progress all the time to be a good person or a good human,
Exactly.
but just keep the ball rolling. Just don't kill the momentum. Just let the ball keep rolling. It doesn't have to roll like insanely quick to be showing anything.
It doesn't even have to roll at all, I think. It's just about doing your best. If on one day you push that ball and it rolls far, amazing. and on the next day it doesn't move an inch, that's okay. It's just, did you show up and do your best? And your best is going to change, but it's about what you can do each day.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that it's kind of funny, I was actually, have you ever heard of Aaron Doughty?
I've not heard of Aaron Doughty.
Okay. He's kind of a spiritual, he's a little more on the mystical side of things, but I dabble with watching his YouTube videos once in a while. And I watched one of his videos like a year ago, and it really opened my mind about something. And I watched a video like 2 hours ago when I got home from work and I was just eating dinner. And it was like basically about the same topic. So I think he just rants about the same thing every day. But anyway, um,
1,000 ways to say the same thing.
yeah, exactly. But he was talking about basically resistance, like experiencing resistance and kind of the mindfulness side of that. And I don't know about you, but when it comes to all of this process with me, that was the hardest thing to get over. And I think I'm just starting to embody this practice more now. And personally, I think it's probably one of the best things that people can do. But um but like really in the end, mindfulness in general, like as long as I can remember, probably as long as modern Western civilization has been around, people are just trying to be happy, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
we're just not necessarily doing it in the right ways. We're like buying cars or sitting on dating apps, just bouncing from person to person, trying to make ourselves feel better. Whatever the approach may be, everyone has their vices, everyone has their things, everyone's been at those places at different points in time in their life. Um, but it's kind of just a really confusing time right now because there's so much overstimulation with phones and with sitting on Instagram, kind of comparing yourself to other people. And life is hard enough as it is. So for me, literally the hardest thing was seeing where I want to be. Most of the time, probably seeing that on Instagram, to be totally honest, seeing people who live these lifestyles who I would like to have. And that's why I follow them on Instagram, to kind of see what they're up to kind of be inspired by that. But the resistance that I would always feel, I'm just going to literally use an analogy that Aaron Doughty used in one of his videos that I was watching. So basically, let's say I'm at one corner, literally trying to cross the street, and I just really want to be on the other side of the road. And the other side of the road could be anything. It could be a relationship that I want. It could be literally a specific person I want to date. It could be a job that I want. It could be an accomplishment. But if you're just kind of staring across the road and that you put too much importance on that, then you're just sitting there feeling all this resistance inside yourself, telling yourself, "Oh, I want that so bad. I want that so bad," and you're really just emphasizing how much you don't have that. And
Yeah.
when really, what you need to do is think about how you need to act, how you need to think, and how you need to feel to get over there. You know, embody. If you want this kind of lifestyle, what do you have to be to get over there? What focus on becoming basically the kind of person who that would happen naturally for. So in your resistance, you might sit there and freak yourself out and you'll like stutter and you'll go to walk and then it'll turn red and you won't be able to cross and you've just kind of self-sabotaged yourself. When just think about the kind of person who would just walk across the road. They would know where they want to go. Um, they would believe that they can get there, obviously. They would just walk across, and that would be the action that they do. It's like when you almost put too much importance on things, and put them on a pedestal, you create this resistance in your life that actually makes it so much more difficult to get to that point. It's a hard concept to verbalize.
Yeah, I think I know what you're getting at, but I agree. It's something maybe that the logical mind likes to try to understand and find a solution to, but then in our experience, when we're in that moment, when we're feeling that resistance, it can be really challenging to kind of push through it, and then whatever it is, walk across the road. or whatever you need to do. And so I guess, you know, what are some of the things that we can do to kind of to move through that resistance when we feel it? And I don't know. For me, that's what the meditation, that's what the yoga, that's what all these practices are for. It's for those challenging moments.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And that's what they've become for me as well. Um, I'm kind of curious to hear what your take is on social media these days and the way that it might affect your mind.
Mm. Well, I definitely think that it's very addictive because it's engineered to be so. They earn, Facebook and these other companies earn more money when you spend more time viewing more ads. So they make it really addictive, and it's not with the interest of providing the best experience to the people. It's with the interest of making the most money. And as we know, from time after time of example of history, like when the interest of money is first, it hurts everyone below that. So that's us, the people are using social media. um, like many things, it's kind of a tool though, so it can be used for good and bad. One quick tip I have for everyone is you can get an ad blocker that works with Facebook. That's the best thing in the world, I think, and not see ads on Facebook, which I love. Because the good sides about Facebook is community and social. Because when I'm traveling the world, I can talk to people from where I grew up. I can reach out to my parents and my siblings easily, and I can find Facebook groups. I love Facebook groups for people with. It's just a helicopter going by here. Second.
I can't even hear it.
Oh, you can't hear it. Amazing.
No.
Then I'll continue.
Yeah.
Wow, it's loud. So, um, where was that? Yeah, the groups on Facebook are amazing. Like what you said about being in Toronto, a big city where you can find people with like the same interest and find your tribe. Well, that can be harder if you don't live in a city with like 8 million people around, right? So Facebook groups are amazing to connect with people who have the same interests as you and to make friends, because friendship doesn't always have to be in person. It's amazing when it is, but sometimes that's not possible. And so friendship really comes down to connection. It's connection between humans, and connection between humans can be in person, it can be on the phone, it can be through social media, it can be through many things. So it's a slippery slope. It's a dangerously addictive platform, and something I wrestle with all the time because I'm using social media to connect with people interested in the projects I'm working on, but also thinking like, man, I don't think people should spend time on social media. It's like I kind of look at it where I'm almost using social media to connect with people. Like, let's say they come to my retreat, where then we practice and learn the things that are actually going to lead them to not using social media. So it's almost like, I don't know, using the system to take down the system, but does that make any sense? Because in the first place, I'm using it. I guess my overall sentiment about social media is that a high degree of like caution and wariness is healthy, but also, yeah, just realizing at the end of the day, it's how you use it that makes it good or bad, and you have the choice. But it's really addictive, so it can be hard to use it for good only. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a habit that we all really need to be conscious of in this day and age. And it's always interesting to hear people's takes on it, especially people like yourself who they basically have a lot of things going on through social media. Like I know you have the Digital Nomads Forum and it has a huge amount of people in there. So obviously you want to keep your community engaged. So you would be forced to be active on Facebook quite often. But
Yeah. No, I feel it.
yeah, it's such a tricky situation, man. But
It is tricky.
yeah, because it's such a double-edged sword, you know. I won't quit it because I do like it. I'm also a very visual person. Like I love going on Instagram and looking at all the surf photography and all the snowboard photography and all the different directors and people who I'm following and seeing what they're up to, and also seeing what all my friends are up to. But I'll use today as an example. Like, I was on Instagram a lot yesterday, so I made the conscious decision I'm going to take probably a couple days off and just not go on Instagram at all. And I feel a lot more calm right now than I would probably on a normal Monday where I've looked at Instagram a few times now. And it's just little subtle differences like that, but it's exactly that kind of process. Like, I don't think it would be bad, but what bothers me is the fact that I even have to tell myself, don't go on it for 2 days, and I have to like almost battle this urge, because there's something to be said about having control over those urges that you feel.
Yeah. No, totally.
So I almost forgot about this. This is actually, I didn't even write this down, but I'm remembering that you've done some silent retreats and did you do a full water fast for like multiple days as well?
So I have done a 3-day water fast where I just drank nothing but water for 3 days. And for the silent retreat, I think you're referencing, it did one 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat, which is, yeah, basically 10 days of not talking and just meditating.
Wow. How did you find the meditation retreat? I'll ask that one first, but I'm really into fasting these days, so I got some questions about that too.
Cool. So Vipassana experience was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but it was also immensely rewarding. Like, we kind of talked about, or I kind of talked about, like, my perspective on yoga, where it's like each day you're kind of coming to that edge. And, you're just holding your arms up a little bit longer. And, holding your arms up a little bit longer is, not that hard. We can do it. But Vipassana to me was like, it's like coming to your edge and then like staying there for like 10 days. And it's really challenging. So the connection there, just, I think we're back. But I guess what Vipassana really taught me about was kind of craving and aversion. So we're almost, it seems, at least for me, it's like always in a state of like wanting something we don't have, or feeling aversion towards something we do have. And that can be like a sensation, emotion, thought, like things, it can be anything. And either way, craving and aversion, it just comes down to suffering. Like, it comes down to the sensation of discontent. And Vipassana teaches a very practical, non-religious approach to using a meditation technique to kind of find peace with the moment as it is, whether you want something or you don't want something, just being at peace with that moment. And so it was life changing, and the experiential learning I gained through it has stuck with me now for sure. It's been almost a year, and that was it. That's what I would say just quickly about that experience.
So what do you think you took away from that experience that would be the learning that you use in your life now?
Um, wow,
It's
that's a
just
good
kind of,
question.
yeah, or was it just a wild experience that kind of shaped your perception in a different way?
I think that is probably more accurate. Like, it's hard to put into words, but I definitely resonate with that. It was a crazy experience that had like a permanent effect on my perception that is with me now. How that looks exactly is hard to describe, but I would just say that I'm a lot more aware of what causes any discontent in my life. So just understanding it a little bit more, like, oh, is this a sensation? Am I craving something? Am I feeling averse to something happening? Like, what's going on? And just being able to step back, recognize that, and then having some tools in my tool belt to then work through that, whether that's meditation or doing something else that I know is supportive for me. Maybe that's taking a walk or going for a swim or whatever it could be. So I guess it just has helped me step back when I'm facing challenges of discontent in my life.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. And so for fasting, I'm kind of curious. I would assume that you were doing that on more of a spiritual plane where you were doing it to kind of push yourself to kind of a specific state. Um, like when I say that I'm interested in fasting, I'm not going to lie. I'm interested in the scientific kind of biological benefits that are being discovered more recently, like autophagy and how it helps your body kind of cleanse itself of like shitty old dead cells and things that can potentially cause diseases in you. Um, and in that way, it can help with aging and whatnot. But since then, I've been reading a little bit more about it, and I'm hearing a lot more about kind of water fasts and what you've been up to. And I've been really planning on doing like a full several day fast at some point, but it's just hard to pull off when I'm like so go 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 living like a Toronto lifestyle, you know?
Yep. So, your assumption, sadly, Sean, is incorrect, but
Oh, okay.
that's okay because I guess I went into the water fast with, yeah, definitely more of like, okay, I've read some scientific and like physical benefits I'm going to get from it. Amazing. So that was like my main motivation for trying it. But then while doing it and experiencing it, just kind of just being like, I think fairly open to whatever was happening. But the main, first off, it was amazing. Like it was challenging and like physically unpleasant, but the takeaways were exceptional for me. Like first, realizing it really connected me with like some of the mental limitations I had put in my mind about like hunger and food. Because the reality is, if you're a decently healthy individual, you can not eat anything and just drink water for 3 days, like no problem. Like that was not that hard. Like I for sure at the end of it was like, oh, that was a challenge, but it wasn't, I didn't think I was gonna die or like it wasn't that extreme. It was like, oh wow, I'm really capable. My body is capable of a lot more than I thought. And so you realize, wow, well, if I had that limiting belief about like what I can do in terms of food and survival and water, then, maybe what are some of the other limiting beliefs that I have that just aren't true? And so that was interesting. From a physical body kind of perspective, it brought me extremely closer to, I don't know, just a connection with my digestive system. So that was an interesting side effect of the whole thing, was that because I wasn't eating, a lot of new sensations and emotions and things are happening in the body. And so it really draws it, for me anyways, drew my awareness inwards instead of kind of out on the rest of the world, inwards into what's happening in my body. And then when breaking the fast and like slowly introducing like juice and then like soft food and then back to regular food, really being aware of, whoa, like how is this food making me feel? Because your awareness has been drawn in, especially to your digestive system so much, at least, yeah, for me during the 3 days. And then it doesn't really change as you start eating again, it does eventually. But for me, when I was starting to eat back again, it really was still, oh, just drank this juice. Like, how do I feel? What's my energy level like? Like, how does my stomach feel? And really definitely like significantly helped me start to understand a bit more like which foods help me feel neutral, like good, just balanced energy, which make me feel lethargic, which make me feel energetic. And that was amazing because that stuck with me. And that's a really valuable relationship to have with your body and your digestive system, is like understanding how food makes you feel. And yeah, I think that was probably the biggest takeaway. The other thing was I noticed I just had like, I guess like chronic bloating almost. Like after that fast, like it wasn't that I had lost weight, but my stomach was like just like way more in. And it's just like some sort of kind of like, inflammation or bloating from kind of just eating food that's not healthy for you. And I would have going in that fast, I would definitely have considered myself like a pretty healthy person, like eating decent food and doing a lot of exercise and having an active lifestyle, but still being impressed with some of the benefits I think you probably read about of how healing and beneficial fasting can be for the body. So I kind of experienced a little bit of that, and that was cool.
That's so interesting. What kind of foods do you think you were eating before, looking back now, that were causing that bloating that you experienced?
I think it probably would have been like, I'm 26 now, and I've probably been cleaning up my eating now for like a little bit over a year and a half. So that means that there's still 24 and a half years of kind of not, I wouldn't say like horrific eating, but eating a Western diet, like a lot of meat, a lot of processed food, refined sugars, or refined carbohydrates, all that, like just not good stuff. Like processed food turns out is not good for your body. And so if you eat that for 24 and a half years, there's an impact, and that's what a lot of your body's made up of. Can you change that? Heck yes. But it takes time. And so, your digestive system is accustomed and has like a, not a habit, but like, I guess there's just an impact on all your systems from eating that food for so long. It takes longer than I think a year and a half to kind of completely clean out, like, for every cell to have been rebuilt with the new food, like healthier food that you're eating. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really, I mean, I'm not a vegan. I eat meat, but I eat well. Like I definitely do. I eat almost like entirely plant-based and meat. So, like I'm not really eating processed like carbs, not as many. I mean, I give in sometimes to like eating junk food, but when you start
We all do.
eating, yeah, we're only human, but when you truly start eating a diet that is mostly made of healthy, like living like plants and stuff, like these are vibrant things, dude, putting in your body that are made of vitamins and nutrients. And like it's amazing how much your energy levels go up. Like I think that I do intermittent fasting, and I'm doing it pretty aggressively these days. I eat like I would say 1.5 meals after I get home from work. Like I probably like start eating some food mid-afternoon, and then I eat a big meal when I get home from work, and that's pretty much it. Maybe snack a little bit here and there, but I'm very conscious of how many hours I'm pushing it every single day. And my bloating has like disappeared basically. And I also have cut out like eating pasta or carbs. I like don't really eat bread or anything anymore. Um, and it's funny, like a lot of people kind of think that you're just taking it too far when you do that kind of thing. But um, like my stepmom is doing the same thing. My mom is doing it. I have a couple friends whose moms are doing it, and like they're all seeing insane results. Like, I
Yeah.
just don't think that those are all like as much as some people might feel like it's a little bit of a hypocritical thing to say. It's like I don't know that humans were supposed to eat those things. Bread, sure, it's been in our culture forever, but it's
Yeah,
kind of
I would, what I would say is there's a lot of different like advice and diet and nutrition systems and formulas that different people recommend. Personally, I mostly eat, just a plant-based diet, whole foods, try to avoid processed food. But at the end of the day, like people just need to experiment. You need to try something, give it a fair try, try it for a few weeks, a month at least, and see how you feel, because people's bodies are different, and we're all unique. But at the same time, pretty much everyone will benefit from not eating processed food, for example. But you just got to test it. You got to test it for your own body and see what happens. stop, there's information overwhelm when it comes to nutrition. There's too much different theories and systems. So just try, see what works, and stick with what works for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I like that philosophy of kind of listening to your own body, because for me, that's something that I heard with eating, and that's kind of where it started. But I think it's something that applies to everything, literally everything. And I believe that emotions are even attached to that. It's like, why are you sad and stressed out? Are you forcing yourself to work in a job that you hate? Are you like doing, I don't know, are you in a relationship that is bad for your mentality? Um, were you feeling good and then you scrolled through Instagram and like compared yourself to a bunch of people and then you felt bad right after? Listen to like the way everything that's a
Makes
stimulus
you
is
feel,
affecting
yeah,
you, right?
yeah,
And I guess that
totally
goes
agree.
full circle with the way that you describe mindfulness too. Now that I think about it.
How's that? Uh-huh.
Um, just kind of observing the way that things,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
As
are actually
as things
affecting you.
are,
Yeah,
for sure.
cool. Well, I think that's probably a pretty good time to cut the recording. Some of
Yeah,
these
we
have
can.
crept a little bit longer over the hour mark, but I like to keep them somewhere around there. So
Yeah,
thanks for doing this, man.
thank.
I appreciate the conversation. I definitely, it's always nice catching up and hearing what you're up to, because you're always doing different, interesting things that I don't get to hear about too much from too many people.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, Sean. It was just nice chatting with you. Feels like cool ideas and good things for people to hear were just flowing. So thank you.